What's up guys, my name is Ace, and it's finally time to talk about what I consider to be the most useless perk in Modern Warfare 3, and honestly, it's among one of the most useless perks in Call of Duty history. And this is the LR Detector. I've had a lot of people asking me, what does this even do? So today, I'm gonna break it down, explain exactly how it works, why it's so bad, as well as what I would like to see done to it to make it at least a little bit more viable, and not just a waste of space in our perk list. So let's dive into it, and we're going to start this off with the description. It says that it warns of hostile laser and radiation sources, and that is an extremely vague description. However, if you look really closely, the little perk icon that you can see on there is the high alert perk icon. So back in the beta when I was trying to figure this out, I thought, okay, this must be high alert, but then I put it on and realized nothing was happening. And it definitely wasn't working like high alert did. So let's have a look at what it actually does in the game. With this, depending on what the enemy is using as far as attachments go, you can get a high alert-like indicator on your screen, but unlike high alert, there's no directional data whatsoever. It's just a little red glow on the bottom of your screen, as well as a little beeping sound that you'll hear. And unlike high alert, it actually doesn't matter if the enemy is in front of you or behind you, if they're in your field of view or not. It will always pop up as long as they are using a particular attachment. Whereas with high alert, this would only work if they were outside of your field of view. If they were right in front of you and looking at you, high alert wouldn't be doing anything for you. That's not the case with the LR Detector. In saying that though, like I said, the enemy has to be using a specific type of attachment. And this type of attachment can be any one of the lasers, any thermal optic, or any optic that has a rangefinder on it. And taking a little bit of a deeper look here, when it comes to the lasers, it doesn't matter which one of the lasers you use, whether it says that it's visible to enemy players or not, even the ones that don't have a visible laser beam, that will end up triggering the LR Detector when you aim at an enemy player that's using this. And on top of that, it doesn't matter if you're aiming down sight or not. So let's just say you have one of those lasers that only turns on when you aim down sight. Well, when it comes to this one, even if you aren't aiming down sight, as long as you're looking in the direction of that enemy player, it will still activate this LR Detector indicator for them. Then when it comes to those optics, again, this covers any one of the optics that has a thermal target indicator, as well as any of the optics that have a rangefinder on them. And once again, just like with the lasers, it doesn't actually matter if you're aiming down sight or hip firing. So just the act of having that laser on your gun that's in your hand, that will trigger this LR Detector for enemies. Now, just to clarify, if it's in your secondary weapon slot and the primary weapon that's in your hands doesn't have a laser or a thermal optic, then you still won't be triggering this for them. The only attachments that matter are the ones that are on the gun that's in your hand. And that's pretty much it. I guess I should also mention this has a range of 100 meters, so anything beyond 100 meters and this won't trigger at all, regardless of what optic or laser you have on there. And also, you do have to be aiming at least reasonably close to the enemy player in order to trigger that for them. I also want to mention I did a bunch of testing with various kill streaks, and whether that kill streak is AI controlled or player controlled, and if it is player controlled, I tried it with the thermal setting and the non-thermal setting, and based on my testing, none of the streaks had any interaction with this whatsoever. So if you're targeting a player while looking through the view of a streak, it will not activate the LR Detector, even if it's a thermal indicator. Also, just to clarify, in the laser category, I also tested flashlights, and flashlights will not activate LR Detector like the lasers will, even though it's in the laser category. And then finally, I also tested the TACCAM field upgrade, because that allows you to see enemy players from the view of that TACCAM. And once again, this has no interaction with the LR Detector. You won't get a beep if somebody's looking at you through a tactical camera, even if they're using the thermal setting. So I do feel I was quite thorough with my testing, but if there's anything else that you ever find that maybe I missed in this video that will also activate the LR Detector, please let me know in the comments down below. As of now, at least, the only things that I found are the laser attachments, the thermal optics, and the rangefinder optics. And there we go, that breaks it down for everything I was able to find with the LR Detector. And as you can tell, this is a severely nerfed version of high alert, like so severely that this is practically useless. It relies on enemies using lasers or thermal or rangefinder optics. And if nobody on the enemy team happens to be using those attachments, you are literally wasting one of your most valuable perk slots in the entire game. And this is where I want to share my thoughts on the LR Detector and how I would like to see it balanced going forward, because I do think a change is absolutely needed for this if they want to make it anything but just wasted space in the gear slot. And honestly, I think the best and easiest solution to this that I don't think would be broken by any means is just allow this to work all the time, regardless of what attachments the enemy players are using. If an enemy player looks at you, you get this indicator. And then I'd say to introduce some counterplay, I think it should be countered by the hijacked IFF strobe. So if you're using that perk, then you won't trigger any indicator for the LR detector. And that's exactly how Cold-Blooded and High Alert interacted together in the past. And honestly, I think that would be a just fine way to balance the LR detector. You still wouldn't get that directional indicator. It still would be a nerfed version of High Alert, but it wouldn't be a completely useless version of High Alert. At least it would almost always tell you when somebody is looking at you, and that would at least give it some utility in the game. And like I said, I think that's the simplest and probably the best thing that they could do with the LR detector. However, I also wanted to point out that I wouldn't necessarily be entirely opposed to just bringing this back as the standard High Alert perk and then have it countered by hijacked IFF strobe, just like we've seen in recent years with Call of Duty. And I want to explain myself a little bit here because I've never actually been the biggest fan of High Alert in Call of Duty, since I feel it does replace much of the need for having proper map awareness and ensuring that you're controlling your angles and controlling the map appropriately. In saying that, I do think High Alert can bring a little bit more interesting variety into play when it comes to perk balancing. And when I look at the big picture, I've always considered High Alert to be sort of like a noob trap. Because it's one of those perks where if you have really good map awareness, then it won't really do much extra for you because you've got good map awareness. So it's one of those perks that you can kind of grow out of. But for those players that don't have good map awareness and rely on High Alert, that means they're going to be sacrificing that valuable tier slot in order to be always using High Alert. And that means those players may be vulnerable to explosives or AI targeting systems because they're not using hijacked IFF strobe, or maybe even the UAV if they're not using the assassin vest combined with that LR detector. So while I think my first suggestion would be just fine, I honestly wouldn't be opposed to them just bringing this back as the proper High Alert perk, same High Alert perk that we've seen in recent years. Just make sure that it's countered by hijacked IFF strobe or something else if they wanted to as well. And I think that would fit just fine in the gear slot. That would make it quite a competitive choice for those that lack in map awareness and want that little bit of extra. And while I personally wouldn't end up using it very often at all, I wouldn't mind if my enemies were using it, if that means they're now exposed to explosive damage, or my AI targeting streaks, or they're not using the bone conduction headset, for instance. I really think that would just improve some perk variety overall in that gear slot. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts on the LR detector after taking a deep look at it. And this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First off, what do you guys think about the LR detector in its current state? And second, do you agree with either of the solutions that I presented here? Whether that's just making this work the same as it does now, but it doesn't matter what attachments enemies are using, and then have that countered by hijacked IFF strobe, or the other option is just bring it back as a full version of High Alert, again, countered by hijacked IFF strobe. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in those comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.